you want knees bent, you bend knees for two different reasons. You bend knees for patient comfort, and you bend knees, mostly for us, we bend knees to make sure that the spine goes down. We're trying to get rid of that lordotic curvature as much as possible. So if knees are bent, that pushes the spine down flatter, okay? So those are the reasons why we do that. So you do want to remember to do that. If you have a patient that can't hold their legs up, it's not comfortable, you can always take your positioning sponge and throw it under their knees. For somebody like Brittany, got a little more back, so I want her knees bent just a little bit more because I do want that spine going down. But so your choice how you want to do that and whatever's comfortable for that patient, okay? All right. And that being said, if we have on these, if you're using a 14 by 17, what all has to be removed from the patient? We want to have bra removed. Why bra? We shouldn't really see the bra in our image, but if we're using a 14 by lengthwise, you see how we'll come up here, we may well see bra straps, so I want the bra gone because I don't want that in my anatomy. It should not be in our lumbar anatomy, but I don't want it on my image, period.
What about our pants?
Pants, yours with the little, we got little zips and stuff. Elastic's not real bad. Undergarments we have to be worried about if we got the little bling on it, little sexy mama or whatever on it. So if they got rhinestones or stuff, we just need it off, okay? Belly rings. Belly rings are a thing, okay? So those would need to be removed. Hopefully that's about as far as we have to go on things that have to be removed. When we are doing the lumbar, especially on the AP, we will be showing the SI joints. The rads will want and expect to see the SI joints. So when we open up, we really, all the more we want to open up is just enough so that we're seeing the SI joints on both sides, okay? So that being said, and we don't need to go any higher than that, we just want to cover them. And we center for this one right at the iliac crest because it's a 14 by. Now once we go into our obliques, we'll raise our centering a little bit higher, okay? Because when we're in obliques, we're not interested in the SI joints anymore, and we come up a little bit higher for that. Okay, so usually you're centering like at L3, so you hit that inferior margin, you're golden. But remember, we don't have a whole lot of gap for the most part on most of us. Crest here, inferior margin here. Most of us are going to have an inch, maybe 2 inches gap in between that, so it's not a big difference, okay? So we don't need to open collimation, and we don't want to open collimation, right? Because if I open collimation, what am I doing? I'm just exposing the patient for no reason. So SI joints, I want them covered. I would have them covered. I don't need a big collimated field. If I have an imaging plate that can be pulled out, my preference is to have the marker on that imaging plate, okay? That's my preference. These happen to be one of the ones where it's not always a doable thing to have it on the imaging plate, but just know if that imaging plate can come out, we can get them on there, and that, you know, keeps it from being magnified and everything and in our way. If you're going to put it on the patient, remember SI joints angle down like this because they follow the sacrum, right? It's that, so get it down here, get it in the corner, get it out of the way of the SI joint. So that's where the SI joint will be the narrowest. So if I put it down here, it's completely out of the way of that joint, okay? So I told you 90 at 15, that'd be all the more we'd use there, and that would be wonderful. Now, when we go, the next thing we'd want to do is we'd want to go ahead, because obviously we don't want to be flipping our patient all over the table, because a lot of times we're gonna have elderly people, it's gonna hurt them to be moving. It will bruise them if we move them a lot, so we don't want to move them a lot. So what I would do is, I'm gonna go ahead and have Brittany drop this knee. Take this arm, bring it across to this shoulder. And I have my choice of being able to either log roll her or having her roll up. To me, it's always easier for me to roll my patient versus my patient rolling themselves. Now, what I need to look for, and it seems silly, but I need to make sure that the shoulder and the hip are on the same plane, okay? Because otherwise, if they're not, that means that patient is twisted. So just make sure that they're on the same plane there, okay? Did it fling off across the room? Yeah, the way it goes sometimes. All right. Now, a couple things here. What I see a lot of times is people going too far over on the obliques. There's a couple ways to be able to tell where you're at. I like to take my lower hand, put it in. You feel me touching your spine?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have my finger on her spine so that I'm centered to her, okay? So here, if I take my top hand and I match it, Caden, can you hit that, the table? Yeah, thanks. If I go here to here, now where my line is here, and it says 2 inches medial. If I put my hand here and here and they line up, then I'm over the spine. Whether or not I believe that or not's a different story, but it is true and it is accurate, okay? So that being said, that's how you want to center on her. And then just look and realize that the spine follows straight up the body. So if this is coming up and it's coming into her cervical spine, then I'm over her spine. What a lot of people do is tend to come centering way over. And so when you look at their images, the obliques are way to one side or the other side instead of sitting in the middle of their image. When you guys start doing them on Pixie, you'll see what I mean. Because if you don't center like that, you'll end up way over, cutting off the front, cutting off the back, and you're like, what's going on? That's what's going on. These are 45-degree obliques, and like I said, you're going to come up just a little higher. Here's her inferior margin here, and I'm centered at that inferior margin, and then over the spine, okay? You have to trust. The bigger the person is, the harder it is to have that trust that you're over the spine. But look at your anatomy. Stand at the top of the table and look down. If you're following your spine, you're golden. Okay? Now the reason why we go ahead and do our RPO first is because once I turn her into her LPO, my next thing is going to be to go up into laterals. So get the RPO out of the way and then start rolling, because everything's going to be rolling up from this point forward. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Go ahead and raise up just a little bit. Pull that out. Go ahead and roll back on your back. Now drop this leg down for me. Raise this one up. Hit this side. Bring it across your chest. Boy, are we taking cell phone pics?
Yeah, I need to take it out.
I was thinking, want me to give it to somebody? Or set it on the table? Oh, let me smoke some cigarettes. I'll feel better after that.
You quit.
Don't
Not
worry,
allowed.
after all this time, I'm not going to do it.
How
It
long
was
has
too
been?
painful. I don't even know. Months now.
Really?
And leave this. I know, it kind of doesn't look right, but it works well. And again, take your bottom hand, touch the spine, take your top hand, make the same distance coming off her body. That's why when I'm doing this, I'm pushing down on that sponge so I can literally see the length of my hand so that I'm making it work for me, okay? Now, this time, even though I'm rolling my patient to my left, I never like that marker sitting over there where the anatomy may go into. So I like putting a right on this. You do not need to. If you put a left, get your left over to the left, okay? That's all you want to do. And again, just come to the top of the table and make sure that this is in alignment with her spine. It's just another double check. Hip, shoulder on the same plane. If they're not on the same plane, one's going to be up and the other one down, or this and this up. We don't want that because then her spine's twisted instead of rotated, okay? Does that make sense to you? Mm-hmm. All right, okay. So now what we're going to do, and this is probably the most uncomfortable position for the patient if you're doing it correctly, okay? We're going to go ahead and have you roll completely up onto your left side for me.
Oh my gosh.
And Brittany actually is a really good patient here for this, because if anyone's going to need some support, it will be
for my butt.
Brittany. Now, I'm going to bring a couple things to try to help me a little bit. First, I'm going to take this. I'm just going to put this between your legs.
That's much better.
Yeah, doesn't it feel a lot better?
It feels a lot better on my hip.
Yeah. And you want the feet directly on top of each other, because you don't want one to pull more than the other, because then her hips won't sit one on top of the other. Now, where we're going to run into problems with Brittany, I think, is going to be here. And I'm sorry, Brittany, not trying to get all fresh with you, girl.
It tickles. It's like a massage.
There we go. Crest. So, intrailiac line, okay? These two thumbs need to line up. If they don't line up and the top is either down further or the bottom's down further, you're going to have to angle, okay? Right now, I'm good. I can live with that. Sorry, girl. Give you a little coverage there. Now, what I do want to see, and this is where I worry on her, is if her spine is going to be straight here. And it actually is, which does surprise me. And the reason why I say that is because she is hippie, so that spine can sag. In these laterals, if the spine sags, you need to get something underneath it, otherwise the joint spaces won't be open for you, and that's what you're trying to do, okay? So now here's where she gets uncomfortable and she likes me a lot less. Okay, Brittany, this shoulder, pull it backwards for me. Okay. Yeah, not the arm under you.
Oh.
Sorry, not that it's not that kind of comfortable. And those of you that were doing T-spines on the table, you saw me come up here and do this. You need the scapula to line up so that you know she's not rotated, and you need the hips one on top of the other. That's not comfortable, is it, Brittany? Okay, so your patient's not going to think it's comfortable, and it's not going to be comfortable, okay? Here. Marker in the front, because here what's going to happen is we know we're going to hit 4-5 right at the crest, so 5-1 is going to be right there. It's going to be moving backwards, so I want that forward and out of the way. I want some light field to the back because the spine runs along the back, okay? So I want light field back here so that I know I have the full spine, and I can use one of the mats underneath it and to make sure that I'm going to get scattered that I'm blocking it off. Just don't get it underneath the anatomy, okay? So just make sure, those of you that shot some lateral tees, I showed you about putting it in there, but keeping it out of the anatomy. You're doing the same thing here, okay? So this is the lateral. She's much thicker this way than she was the other, so that's why we go up in that KV to make up for that thickness, the change in thickness in her anatomy. And she can take her arms and bend them up like in a praying position, but don't say praying position anymore. Tell them 90-degree angle, because some people find that offensive, okay? Whatever. I'm too old school for that, I'm sorry. That doesn't make sense to me, but I'm like, whatever, I'm gonna be nice to people because that's what we're supposed to do. So here, for the spot, what I do is take my hand, cup it, and bring it across. I take my second finger, you do you. I just take it and say, where's the center between my pinky and my thumb? And that's where, generally, where that joint's gonna be. So I have a lot more closed field here. Brittany, you're gonna be a little bit of a challenge to me here. This is simply just the spot film, okay? Just a hair. And I want my marker there because I want it out of the anatomy. Doesn't want to stick to Brittany well. That's what happens when you put it on anatomy. And that's all the more that you need. So you're just going for that L5S1. So that can be collimated down. The more collimated down you are, the prettier that image is going to be. I see people do a cup like this. I don't do my cup like that, so if that's how you like it, you do you. I don't care as long as you're getting L5S1. I just take it again.
What are you collimated to right now?
I'm
I know it depends, but
collimated to. I'm collimated, not even that small, about a 9 by 9. Yep.
okay.
So, and that is truly because what we used to do is we would put our 9 by 9 down at the base of this tray, and it would be sitting right in the center of it. So I'm like so bad because that's what we did, and it was a way to cheat it, and you just did it. But so that's what always feels right to me. But it's just that small area. It could be smaller than that if you wanted to, but that's all the more that is there. And like I said, just here's the hip, here's the crest, come across, come down, center here or center here. Just get to the center of those 2 points as much as you can, and you should be centered well on your patient, okay? And that's your spot film, okay? All right, now, those would be all your normal views in a normal routine. And this, because we have to, I'm already fallen, because we have to actually go through alas somewhat, it adds to the thickness for this shot. So that's why we go up to like the 105 in KV on this, because we're having to get a little bit through the alas and all. So we want to have a little more ability to penetrate. Your general angle is going to be on most people between 5 and 7 degrees. If you have somebody that's like a straight plane and no hips, no difference, you don't have to actually throw an angle on it. The angle is just based on basically the size of the hips, and 5 to 7 is a good rule of thumb for you in there. So Britt, I totally use a full 7 on her. Okay, now I'm going to pull sponges away from you, girl. Okay, and nope, don't go away yet.
Oh.
But I have to have you work, so. Okay, flexion and extension. I could still give you at least a little back here to make your knees more comfy for this part. Okay.